So we just came out of a conference with Nick Landry from Microsoft. You were talking about using speech more in mobile applications and games. So my question is, how is using speech more in mobile applications and games going to help the gaming industry?
Well, the bottom line is I'm trying to get game developers to think about how to think outside the box, not always like recreating the same types of games. Of course, you can always create a more polished idea, but I love to think of new ideas that have never been done. So, for example, hands-free gaming, so that if you're just like taking a walk or you're hiking or you could be driving, of course, you have to be careful with that. But the bottom line is you want to be doing hands-free and eyes-free gaming so that you can. I was showing a demo of a text adventure that's played entirely with speech. So kind of like the old Dungeons and Dragons where you have like the game master reading, the adventure to you, and then after that you are basically saying, what do you want to do? I want to try to recreate the same thing, but whereas the RPG genre, for example, on mobile games or desktop games, or consoles, have taken the path of controlling the character directly, shooting stuff and everything, I'm like, I want to play more like the traditional Dungeons and Dragons where I want to say where I'm going to go next. And I would say, I'm going to open the door, I'm going to attack the goblin. And then the game is going to read back to me while the goblin attacks you, and then you find this treasure in the chest. So it's all about showing how you can use text-to-speech, also known as speech synthesis, and also speech recognition, so that you can actually have the software recognize the user and creating a new kind of experience. So in an industry that's heavily saturated with a lot of games and a lot of choice, it's very hard to find unique ideas. That's what I'm trying to go for here.
Now, I understand that at Microsoft you guys have a special program that you use for this. I believe it's called SSML. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Oh, so so SSML is actually an open standard from the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium that manages all the standards of the web, like HTML, for example. So, because we're very standards conscious, at Microsoft, we basically try to make sure that we use open standards. So with SSML, it basically allows us to kind of like change the inflection of the voice. So instead of just reading, if you hear like a synthetic voice, basically a computer voice, sometimes it can sound a little kind of boring, kind of monotonous. With SSML, you can change the pitch, you can change the speed, you can change the tone and the inflection of the voice. You can even change how certain words are going to be pronounced. So when a developer really goes beyond just the basics of text-to-speech, they can actually manipulate the voice a lot more to create a more human feel for it.
And so how has using speech in games evolved? Because one of the things you were talking about was using voice actors for different games, using speech integrated gaming. Another thing you talked about is using these speech-based games for people with disabilities and with learning issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, of course. When it comes to basically doing voice-based games, the traditional like PC game, console game, of course, usually the big AAA budgets will usually allow you to actually go for like voice actors and creating like a whole like project out of this. But for a mobile game, usually you don't want to have like a massive game that you're going to have to download over wireless or over cellular. So that's where using synthesized speech for things like maybe like the voice of the tutorial. If you're doing a tutorial that's teaching you how to do the game, you can use a synthesized speech for this. You don't need a voice actor for this to tell the user, go here, do that, click that, to kind of help them. If there's any kind of like robot or computer in the game, if it's more of a sci-fi game, for example, again, a synthesized voice is definitely something that you can use. Beyond that, it just opens up like a world of possibilities. For people with disabilities or for education, there's a whole segment of the industry called serious games, which are games where we're basically doing kind of like games for education, games for people that have special needs, or it could just be like for regular folks. It's all about using a new form of basically of learning, where we're using games because they're more engaging, but at the same time, the game has an actual goal beyond just pure entertainment. So for that, of course, anybody that will have any kind of vision impairment, speech is going to be huge, of course. But it can also be for someone who has a physical impairment. Like, for example, we have collaborated with Stephen Hawking to basically augment the technology that he's using to speech every day, despite the fact that at this point, the only part of his body that it can move somewhat are basically his cheeks, facial expression, and with that he's manipulating a cursor on screen, a system that learns about what he's saying. So this is a clear example of where that can go. And that technology was actually open source as well. So anybody can pick it up.
That's fantastic. So the last thing I want to ask you is, because again, you are presenting from Microsoft, what kind of initiatives and programs does Microsoft have going on right now, which I would guess you would have some part of to implement these in future games and programs?
Yeah, we have so many different programs at Microsoft. Of course, for developers that want to build on the Xbox, we have the ID at Xbox program, which is a very curated process. We want to control the quality of the games that goes on Xbox. But if you have a great game idea, it doesn't matter if you're not a AAA studio, you can be a small indie studio. So ID at Xbox is great for that. We have the BizSpark program as well, which is where we offer you resources that are perfect for small studios, independent developers, small startups, and you will get all the resources you need, like no strings attached. It's definitely perfect for small companies that have like no big budgets or anything. So it's basically all about helping companies succeed with the resources that they have. And they'll get access to our cloud, they'll get access to our software without having to worry about basically hurting their budgets or anything. So it's there's a lot of different programs for this. So BizSpark is one of them, and definitely we have MSDN resources. We have Microsoft Virtual Academy, which is our online training site where everybody can just go like watch like tons of resources on classes for game development, classes for programming, fundamentals of programming, cloud, and it's all open to anyone that just wants to go and use it.
Wonderful. Well, Nick, I want to thank you very much for your time today. It was a really great presentation, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.